I stood in that doorway with a mop in one hand and my last $20 in the other, staring at a horse that shouldn't have been alive. The stable manager had warned me, "Don't go near the black one. He doesn't let anyone close." But when I stepped into that dim corridor, something impossible happened. That horse, the one they said was broken, dangerous, dying, lifted his head and looked at me like he'd been waiting his entire life for me to walk through that door. Before I tell you what happened next, I need to ask you something. Have you ever felt like the universe was trying to tell you something through the most unexpected messenger? Maybe an animal, a stranger, or a moment that felt too perfectly timed to be coincidence? Because what I'm about to share changed everything I thought I knew about grief, second chances, and the language we speak without words. If you've ever felt chosen by something you couldn't explain, drop a comment below with your city. And if you believe some connections transcend logic, hit that like button and subscribe, because this story will make you question what's possible when you stop running from the very thing that's meant to save you. Now let me take you back to where it all began. My name is Iris, and 6 months before I walked into Meadowbrook Stables, I buried my husband. Daniel died on a Tuesday. I remember because Tuesdays were our day. The day we'd met at a farmer's market 12 years earlier, the day he'd proposed on a beach at sunset, the day we always reserved for just us, no matter how crazy life got. He had a heart attack in our kitchen while I was upstairs folding laundry. By the time I found him, it was too late. The paramedics said he was probably gone before he hit the floor. They said it like that was supposed to comfort me. It didn't. The months that followed were a blur of casseroles from neighbors I barely knew, condolence cards with generic messages, and the suffocating silence of a house that had once been filled with Daniel's terrible singing and the smell of his weekend pancakes. I stopped sleeping in our bedroom. I stopped cooking. I stopped doing most things that required me to acknowledge I was still alive while he wasn't. The money ran out faster than I expected. Daniel had been the practical one, the planner. I taught part-time at a community center, art classes for seniors, barely enough to cover groceries. Our savings evaporated with medical bills and funeral costs. By month 5, I was 3 weeks behind on rent, surviving on rice and canned beans, and scrolling through job listings at 2 in the morning because sleep had become a stranger. That's when I saw the posting. Stable hand needed. Cleaning, basic maintenance. No experience required. Room for advancement. I knew nothing about horses. I'd ridden a pony at a carnival once when I was 7, but the pay was decent and the listing said they needed someone immediately. I sent my resume at 3 a.m., not expecting anything. They called me at 9 the same morning. The woman on the phone was curt, businesslike. "Can you start Monday?" "Yes," I said, before my brain could list all the reasons I couldn't. "Good. Wear boots if you have them. Ask for Garrett when you arrive." Meadowbrook Stables sat on the outskirts of town, tucked into rolling hills that looked like something from a painting. The main barn was massive, weathered wood that had probably stood for 50 years or more. Smaller buildings dotted the property, an indoor arena, storage sheds, a white farmhouse in the distance. Garrett met me in the parking lot. He was maybe 60, with sun-weathered skin and eyes that assessed me in 3 seconds flat. "You're Iris?" "Yes, sir." "You ever worked with horses?" "No, sir," he grunted. "Honest. I appreciate that. Most people lie, then quit after 2 days when they realize it's actual work." He handed me a pair of gloves. "You'll be cleaning stalls, filling water troughs, spreading fresh bedding. I'll show you the routine. Stay out of the south paddock. That's where we keep Apollo." "Apollo?" "The black Frisian. He's difficult." Garrett's expression darkened. "Owner died 8 months ago. Horse has been a nightmare ever since. Won't eat properly, won't let anyone near him without a fight. We're keeping him comfortable until—" He stopped himself. "Just stay clear of him." "Understood?" I nodded, though something in his tone made my chest tighten. The work was exactly as hard as I'd imagined, and somehow worse. My back ached within the first hour. My hands blistered even through the gloves. The smell of manure and hay became so embedded in my clothes that I stopped noticing it by day 3, but I showed up. Every morning at 6, I was there with my thermos of cheap coffee and my second-hand boots, mucking stalls and hauling feed bags that weighed almost as much as I did. Garrett watched me those first few days with silent skepticism, but by the end of the week, he started giving me small nods of approval. "You're tougher than you look," he said on Friday, tossing me a protein bar from his lunch. "Most people don't make it past Wednesday." I caught it, surprised. "I need this job. I can tell." He studied me for a moment. "You running from something or towards something?" The question hit harder than it should have. "I don't know yet." He accepted that with another nod. "Fair enough." It was the following Monday when I first saw Apollo. I'd been sent to the south end of the property to repair a section of fencing. It was early, barely past dawn, and mist still clung to the ground in wispy sheets. I was focused on the broken boards when I heard it, a sound somewhere between a breath and a sigh, low and deep. I looked up. There, behind a weathered fence, stood the most magnificent horse I'd ever seen. He was massive, pure black, except for a small white star on his forehead. His mane was long and wild, tangled with bits of straw. But it was his eyes that stopped me cold. They were dark, intelligent, and filled with something I recognized immediately because I saw it in my own mirror every morning. "Grief. You must be Apollo," I whispered. His ears flicked forward. He didn't move closer, but he didn't turn away either. We stood there, maybe 20 feet apart, just looking at each other. The world went quiet. No birds, no wind, just the sound of two broken things acknowledging each other's existence. "Iris!" Garrett's voice shattered the moment. "What did I tell you about that paddock?" I jerked back, nearly dropping my hammer. "I'm sorry, I was just nothing. That horse is dangerous. Kicked one of our best trainers last month, broke his ribs." Garrett pointed back toward the main barn. "Go clean the tack room. Stay away from Apollo." I did as I was told, but I couldn't shake the image of those eyes. There was nothing dangerous in them, only pain. Over the next 2 weeks, I found excuses to work near Apollo's paddock. I never went inside, never tried to approach him. But I'd take my lunch breaks on the fence rail, eating my sandwich while he stood in the far corner, pretending not to watch me. I started talking to him, quietly, like I was talking to myself. I told him about Daniel, about how the house echoed now, about how sometimes I forgot he was gone, and would start to call his name before remembering. I told Apollo about the little things that broke me, finding Daniel's reading glasses in the couch cushions, hearing our song on the radio, waking up and reaching for someone who would never be there again. Apollo never came closer, but he stopped turning his back to me. That felt like something. One afternoon, Garrett caught me sitting on the fence, mid-story about Daniel's obsession with terrible action movies. "You're wasting your time," he said, not unkindly. "That horse is too far gone." "Gone where?" I asked. Garrett sighed, leaning against the fence beside me. His owner, Elliot, raised Apollo from a foal. They were inseparable. Elliot was one of those old money types. Bought this horse from some fancy European breeder, spent a fortune training him. But it wasn't about the money. Those two had a bond I've never seen between human and animal. When Elliot got sick, Apollo knew. Horse stopped eating right, started pacing his stall at night. After Elliot died, he shook his head. Apollo's been deteriorating ever since. Won't bond with anyone. Won't respond to training. The vet says physically he's fine, but mentally, he trailed off. What's going to happen to him? Garrett didn't answer right away. Elliot's daughter is coming next month to settle the estate. She's already made it clear she doesn't want the horse. If we can't find someone to take him and he doesn't improve, he didn't need to finish the sentence. My stomach dropped. You'd put him down. We'd have no choice. Can't keep a horse that won't let anyone care for him properly. It's not fair to the animal. Garrett straightened up. I know you mean well, Iris, but talking to him from outside a fence isn't going to fix what's broken. Some things are just too damaged to save. He walked away, leaving me alone with those words echoing in my head. Some things are just too damaged to save. I looked at Apollo, still standing in his corner, his head low. "I don't believe that," I whispered. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about Apollo, about Garrett's words, about the unfairness of a creature suffering because the human world couldn't understand his language of grief. At 4 a.m., I gave up on sleep and drove back to the stables. The property was dark except for a single light above the main barn entrance. I parked and walked slowly toward Apollo's paddock, my heart hammering. This was stupid, reckless. Garrett would fire me if he found out, but I kept walking. Apollo was lying down when I reached his fence, his massive body curled in the dirt. For one horrible moment, I thought he was dead. Then his ears twitched, and he lifted his head, looking directly at me through the darkness. "Hey," I said softly. "I couldn't stop thinking about you." He watched me but didn't stand. I climbed over the fence, slowly, carefully, giving him every opportunity to react. He didn't move. I walked 3 steps closer, then stopped, sitting down in the dirt about 10 feet from him. "I know what it's like," I said. "Losing the person who made the world make sense. Everyone tells you it gets easier, but they're lying, aren't they? It doesn't get easier. You just get better at pretending it does." Apollo's ear flicked toward me. "Daniel used to leave me these stupid notes on the bathroom mirror, in my coat pocket, in the car. Just little things. 'You're beautiful,' or 'Don't forget milk,' or 'I love you more than coffee,' and that's saying something." I laughed, but it came out wet. I found one last week, tucked into a book I hadn't opened in months. It said, "Future Iris, remember you're stronger than you think. Past Daniel believes in you." My voice cracked. "I don't feel strong, Apollo. I feel like I'm drowning, and everyone's standing on the shore telling me to just swim harder." That's when Apollo did something extraordinary. He stood up, slowly, carefully, and took 2 steps toward me, then 2 more. He stopped just beyond arm's reach, lowering his head until his nose was level with mine. We breathed together in the darkness, 2 broken things recognizing kindred spirits. I didn't touch him, didn't move, just sat there with tears running down my face while this massive, grieving horse chose to trust me with his proximity. "Thank you," I whispered. When I finally left an hour later, Apollo was still standing near where I'd sat, watching me go. I started coming to the stables before my shift started, spending an hour with Apollo in the early morning darkness. I never rushed him, never pushed. I just showed up, sat in his paddock and talked. Slowly, incrementally, he began to close the distance between us. On day 5, he let me touch his nose. On day 8, he rested his head against my shoulder while I cried about missing Daniel's birthday. On day 12, he ate an apple from my hand. Garrett noticed the changes. How could he not? Apollo, who had been listless and hostile for months, was suddenly alert, responsive. He started eating his full portions again. The wildness in his eyes softened into something calmer. "What are you doing with that horse?" Garrett asked me one morning, his tone caught between suspicious and impressed. "Just talking to him." "Talking." He studied me. "Our trainer tried everything. Treats, different saddles, gentle encouragement, firm boundaries. Nothing worked. But you just talk? Sometimes that's what grief needs," I said quietly. "Not solutions, just someone who will sit with it." Garrett was silent for a long moment. "Elliot's daughter is coming tomorrow. She's made arrangements for Apollo to be transported to a sanctuary downstate. They specialize in difficult horses." He paused. "Unless someone makes her a reasonable offer to buy him outright." My heart lurched. "How much?" "More than you have, I'm guessing." His expression was gentle. "I'm sorry, Iris. I know you two have connected, but maybe this is good. The sanctuary will take care of him." "Will they love him?" Garrett had no answer for that. I spent my entire shift in a fog, my mind racing through impossible calculations. Apollo would cost thousands. Money I didn't have, couldn't get. I was barely keeping my apartment. How could I possibly afford to buy and care for a horse? But the thought of losing him felt like losing Daniel all over again. Like the universe was asking me, how much more can you lose before you disappear entirely? That afternoon, I was cleaning the tack room when I found it, a leather journal wedged behind some old saddle blankets. The pages were yellowed, filled with careful handwriting. The name on the inside cover read, Elliot Pembroke. I should have given it to Garrett immediately. Instead, I sat on a hay bale and started reading. The entries spanned years, chronicling Elliot's life with Apollo, training notes, funny anecdotes, philosophical musings about the bond between human and horse. But it was the final entries that broke me. June 3rd. The doctors say I have 6 months, maybe less. I'm not afraid of dying, but I'm terrified of leaving Apollo. Who will understand him the way I do? Who will know that he likes his water cold, that he's afraid of thunderstorms, that he responds to patience, not force? I've asked everyone I trust, but no one can promise me they'll keep him safe. No one can promise they'll love him as more than just an animal. June 28th. Apollo knows. I see it in the way he watches me, how he stays close. I wish I could tell him it's going to be okay, but I'd be lying. I'm failing him, and there's nothing I can do about it. The final entry was dated just a week before Elliot died, July 19th. If you're reading this, I'm gone, and you found my journal in the place I always hid my doubts, buried where they couldn't hurt anyone. If you've gotten this far, you've probably met Apollo. If he's let you close enough to find this, then maybe, just maybe, you're the answer to a prayer I didn't know how to pray. Apollo doesn't need a rider. He needs a friend. He needs someone who understands that love isn't about ownership. It's about showing up even when it hurts, especially when it hurts. If that's you, stranger, then I have one request. Don't let them take him somewhere he'll just be another broken thing to fix. He's not broken, he's grieving. And grief, when honored, can transform into something beautiful. I closed the journal with shaking hands, Elliot's words burning into my brain. He's not broken, he's grieving. That night, I did something I hadn't done since Daniel's funeral. I prayed, not to any specific God. I'd never been particularly religious, but to whatever force in the universe listened to desperate widows and grieving horses. I don't know what I'm doing, I whispered into my empty apartment. But if there's a way, please show me. The next morning, Garrett introduced me to Victoria Pembroke. She was maybe 40, dressed in expensive casual clothes that screamed, "I don't belong here." She looked at the stables with barely concealed distaste, her heels sinking into the dirt as Garrett walked her through the property. "And this is Apollo," Garrett said, gesturing to the paddock where the black horse stood watching us. "Your father's pride and joy." Victoria's expression didn't change. "The one you said was problematic. He's had some behavioral issues since Elliot passed, but I'm not interested in details." She waved a hand dismissively. "The sanctuary has agreed to take him at no cost to me. They'll pick him up Friday." She checked her watch. "I have 3 other properties to assess today. Are we finished here?" Something hot and furious rose in my chest. "Wait." They both turned to look at me. Garrett's eyes widened in warning, but I couldn't stop myself. "I'd like to make an offer on Apollo." Victoria's perfectly shaped eyebrows rose. "Excuse me, I want to buy him." "Iris," Garrett started, but I cut him off. "How much do you want for him?" Victoria looked me up and down, taking in my dirt-stained jeans and worn boots. "Do you have any idea what a Frisian of Apollo's lineage is worth?" "I know what he's worth to me." Something flickered in her expression. Surprise, maybe, or annoyance. "He's a purebred, trained by some of the best in the country. Even with his current issues, he's worth at least 15,000. The number hit me like a physical blow. I didn't have 15,000. I didn't have 1,000. But I heard myself say, "I can do that." Victoria laughed, actually laughed. "Really? You, a stable hand, can produce $15,000. Give me 3 days. "This is ridiculous," Victoria said, turning to Garrett. "I'm not delaying the sanctuary arrangement for some fantasy negotiation." 3 days, I repeated, my voice stronger. "If I can't get the money by then, he goes to the sanctuary. But if I can, you sell him to me. That's more than fair." Garrett looked like he wanted to drag me away, but Victoria was studying me with new interest. "You're serious?" "Completely." She considered for a long moment. "Fine. 3 days, but I want cash or a cashier's check. No payment plans, no promises. 15,000 or he's gone." She walked away, her heels clicking against the pavement. Garrett pulled me aside the moment she was out of earshot. "What the hell are you doing?" he hissed. "You don't have that kind of money." "I'll find it." "How, Iris? Be realistic." "I can't explain it," I said, surprised by the steadiness in my voice, "but I know I'm supposed to save him, the same way I know that he's been saving me." Garrett's frustration melted into something softer. "That horse can't bring Daniel back. I know that." My eyes filled with tears. "But maybe he can help me figure out how to live without him." I spent the next 72 hours in a fever of desperation. I called every bank, every lending institution, explaining my situation. They all said the same thing: insufficient income, insufficient credit, insufficient collateral. I tried crowdfunding, but 3 days wasn't enough time to build a campaign. I contacted animal welfare organizations, explaining Apollo's situation, begging for help. Most didn't respond. The ones who did said they couldn't assist with private sales. I sold everything I could: my laptop, my jewelry, Daniel's watch collection that I'd been saving for a son we'd never have. It raised $800. Not even close. On the second night, sitting on my apartment floor, surrounded by rejection emails and dead ends, I broke down completely. "I can't do this," I sobbed. "I can't save him. I can't save anything." My phone rang. Unknown number. "Hello?" My voice was wrecked. "Is this Iris?" A woman's voice, older, unfamiliar. "Yes, my name is Dorothy. I was Elliot Pembroke's housekeeper for 30 years. Garrett mentioned you're trying to buy Apollo." I sat up straighter. "Yes, but I don't have the money. I've tried everything." "Elliot left a provision in his will," Dorothy interrupted gently. "A fund specifically for Apollo's care. $20,000 to be given to anyone who could prove they'd bonded with the horse and would care for him properly. His daughter doesn't know about it. He set it up through a separate attorney, specifically to circumvent her if she tried to sell Apollo to just anyone." I couldn't breathe. "What?" "The attorney needs proof of bond. Garrett has to verify it, and you have to write a letter explaining why you want Apollo and how you'll care for him. If the attorney approves, the money is yours, not as a gift, but as a trust for Apollo's lifetime care. 15 for purchase, 5 for initial expenses." Why didn't anyone tell me this before?" Dorothy's voice was warm. "Because the attorney was on vacation. He just got back today and contacted me. Elliot wanted someone who would fight for Apollo, someone who would see him as more than property. Garrett says you've been coming before dawn to sit with a horse everyone else gave up on. That sounds like exactly who Elliot was hoping for." I wrote the letter at 2 a.m. Tears splashing onto the paper as I poured out everything. How Apollo had given me a reason to get up in the morning, how his grief had helped me honor my own, how we'd become each other's lifeline. Garrett verified the bond in a statement that made me cry even harder. In 20 years of working with horses, I've never seen a connection like this. Iris doesn't just care for Apollo, she understands him, and he's come back to life because of her. Elliot would approve. The attorney called me 36 hours later. "The trust is approved. I'll have the check ready by Friday morning." I stood in my kitchen, phone pressed to my ear, and couldn't speak. Couldn't process that this impossible thing was actually happening. "Miss," the attorney prompted, "are you there?" "Thank you," I finally whispered. "You have no idea what this means." "Actually, I do. Elliot was a dear friend. He'd be very happy to know Apollo found you." Friday morning, I met Victoria at the stables with a cashier's check for $15,000. She looked at it like I'd produced a unicorn. "Well," she said, signing the bill of sale with barely concealed irritation, "he's yours. Good luck with him." She left without a backward glance at the horse her father had loved more than anything. Garrett handed me Apollo's registration papers, his eyes suspiciously bright. "You did it." "We did it," I corrected, hugging him. "Thank you for believing in us." I walked to Apollo's paddock alone, the papers clutched in my hand. He was waiting at the fence, his head high, his eyes clear. "Hey, beautiful boy," I whispered, climbing over the fence. "We're going to be okay, both of us." He walked to me without hesitation, pressing his forehead against my chest. I wrapped my arms around his massive neck and cried, but this time they were tears of relief, of hope, of something that felt dangerously close to joy. "I've got you," I promised, "and you've got me." That was 2 years ago. Apollo and I moved to a small property I'm renting with help from the trust. 5 acres with a barn, a pasture, and a little house that's become our sanctuary. I still work part-time at Meadowbrook, but now I also give therapeutic riding lessons to people dealing with grief and trauma. Turns out, a woman and a horse who've both survived loss have a lot to teach others about healing. Apollo isn't fixed. Some mornings, he's still withdrawn, still carrying the weight of what he lost, but he's no longer drowning in it. Neither am I. We've developed our routines. Every morning, I bring him his breakfast and tell him about my dreams. Every evening, we walk the property together, his massive presence beside me, solid and steady. On bad days, the anniversaries, the unexpected triggers, I sit in his stall, and he rests his head over my shoulder, breathing his calm into my chaos. I've started painting again, something I gave up after Daniel died. My latest piece is of Apollo, standing in golden hour light, his mane wild and free. I titled it Chosen, because that's what happened in that stable 2 years ago. We chose each other, 2 broken things, deciding that maybe together we could figure out how to be whole. I still miss Daniel. I don't think that ever goes away. But Apollo taught me that grief doesn't have to be a prison. It can be a bridge between who we were and who we're becoming, between loss and love, between ending and beginning. Last week, a young widow came to the property for her first session. She stood at the pasture fence, watching Apollo graze, her eyes hollow with fresh loss. "I don't know if I can do this," she whispered. "I don't know if I can keep going." "Und I put my hand on her shoulder, remembering a different version of myself standing in a stable doorway, broken, staring at a horse that shouldn't have been alive. "I know," I said gently, "but there's a horse over there who understands exactly how you feel, and sometimes that's enough to start with." Apollo lifted his head, looked at us, and slowly began walking over. That's when I knew, truly knew, that Elliot's final wish had come true. Apollo wasn't just surviving, he was healing. And in doing so, he was helping others heal too. We weren't broken, we were transforming. So if you're going through something that feels impossible, if you've lost something that makes the world feel empty, I want you to remember this. Sometimes salvation doesn't look like you expect. Sometimes it's a job you're unqualified for, a creature everyone else has given up on. A connection that makes no logical sense but feels like coming home. Apollo didn't save me because he was trained to. He saved me because we recognized each other's pain and decided it didn't have to be the end of our stories. Your salvation might be waiting for you too, in the last place you'd think to look, in the moment you're most ready to give up. Don't walk away from the stable. Don't close the door on the thing that chooses you, because the most beautiful transformations happen when 2 broken things decide to be broken together until slowly, miraculously, they realize they're not broken anymore. They're just becoming something new.